Good morning, Business Objects fans. Hey, this is Bruno with Wiiisdom 360 Suite, and I'm based in the awesome city of Boston, Massachusetts. Usually it's always sunny. Today actually it's raining pretty much, so not as good as usual. Folks, I'm super happy to be with all of you for this live event that is streamed live on LinkedIn and YouTube. Yes, as you can see, GBN Smith 360 Suite has become Wiiisdom 360 Suite. And you can visit us on wiiisdom.com. Wiiisdom not only with one eye, not with two eyes, but actually with three eyes. So Wiiisdom with three eyes, wiiisdom.com. And we'll be more than happy to see you on our site. Today, we're going to exchange on SAP Business Objects Private Cloud Edition, also known as PCE. As Wiiisdom 360 is the official SAP Business Objects PCE partner. And we'll be more than happy to help you through the journey to go to PCE. I'm joined by the phenomenal Patrick Sims, who's part of the SAP COE. Hey, Patrick, before we start, I know you're based in DC, and have you finally converted to supporting the Bruins or not?
No, sir. I'm still a Caps fan. The only way to go.
Well, okay, let me go to the only true team, Bruins. So, well, Patrick, I'll pass it over to you to start the presentation. And folks, please feel free to ask your questions during the event, and we'll do our best to answer to all the questions during the event. And if we're not able to answer to all the questions, we'll come back to you later on. And that's something that we do traditionally during all our events. So, Patrick, just a question to the audience before we start. I'd be curious to know from the audience on which business object versions the audience is today. So are you guys on 3.1, 4.0? I hope not. 4.1, 4.2. So please let us know. Please put some comments in on LinkedIn or on YouTube, and then we'll see actually the stream come through, and then we'll start to share the answers as it goes.
And I hope there's no XIR2s out there either.
Yeah, that's actually, I forgot about that one. I haven't seen some for actually quite a bit of time, so I think we're good there. It's been a while. I've seen an XR2, so Patrick, I'll pass it over to you. And what can you tell us about PCE Business Objects Private Cloud Edition?
All right. Well, thank you, Bruno. And does the extra I in wisdom mean you guys have more wisdom than the rest?
Absolutely. That's the whole idea.
That's what I thought. All right. Good stuff. Okay. So good morning, good evening, good day, good afternoon to everybody. Patrick Sims with SAP. As Bruno said, I'm with our Global Center of Excellence for Analytics. I've been with the company for 19 years now. I came over via the Business Objects acquisition. So Bruno and I have known each other and been playing with business objects for a long time together. So the usual slide deck start with the disclaimer, of course. All that really means is whenever I talk about futures, don't base excuse me. Don't base your buying decision on futures that I may discuss, because those may change, of course. But for the most part, I think it's fairly straightforward. I left this in. This is product management slides. This is their agenda, which pretty much goes to every single slide in the deck. But I'm not going to linger there. I'll go straight to their first slide, which, of course, is always why. But, what's the key missing thing here? What? So what is Business Objects Private Cloud Edition? And put it simply, it's business objects in the cloud, managed by a combination of SAP and you, the customer, or a partner, or both, where we handle the plumbing, the physical, the structure, the tech, all of that kind of down in the weeds stuff, and manage subscriptions for you. But then you are still functioning as managers of a business objects environment. So you decide on, how you're going to use the tools, what universes you're going to set up, all of the things that you would tend to do now, just without the pain of the physical structure. Bruno, any thoughts on that simple keep it simple, stupid, kind of what
Yes.
is
So
PCE?
overall, I've got a question, and I'm
Sure.
being asked that question all the time. In fact, is it the exact same Bobj that you're actually putting on the cloud?
Absolutely.
Or is it something that's really tuned for the cloud?
So the tuning happens, kind of by us on what the server configurations are and things like that. But tooling wise, what your end users will see is just Bobj as it is today. And that's a
Okay.
key thing that I think gets lost in some of these slides, which is why I don't like that they don't include a what is PCE there first.
Okay, I understand. So overall, it's pretty much the same Bobj that you have on-prem. You're just putting on the cloud. And in terms of hyperscalers, what are you guys, or who are you guys working with?
Yep. So it's any of three of your choice, which we'll get to as we move on down the slide. So if we hold that, then we can show you there. But
And in terms of managed services, so I understand that you're able to convert your licenses, and we can talk further,
yep.
on that, or later on about that. SAP manages all the infrastructure, so you don't need to worry about the servers, et cetera, anymore. So that's pretty cool. And in terms of upgrades, how do things work? Is it something that's managed by SAP, or is it managed by the admin as it is traditionally?
Yep. And actually, that's a great segue back to the slide here because you mentioned infrastructure, right? So that is included, but operations, so things like patches and upgrades, that's all managed by SAP. And we guarantee you at least one per year where we're handling that upgrade path and that kind of operational rigor. So yeah,
And so this means that basically the testing part, or the typical admin work, still remains on the customer side, but the
correct.
upgrades, as it's basically handled by SAP.
Right. So the
Awesome.
actual, yeah, the physical movement of the environment from say 4.3 Service Pack 1 to Service Pack 2, we handle that. You, the customer, in concert, usually probably with a partner, would handle the, are all of our universes working correctly? The, your whatever process it is that you go through when you're upgrading. And the PCE does come with two tiers. So there's the productive tier and then a test and dev kind of QA tier as well.
And by the way, to the first question that we had around on which environment, on which version of Bobby people are, or the audience is okay. Fortunately, nobody's got XR2. I haven't
Okay.
seen any 4.0, so that's always a good
That's
sign.
all good. Yeah.
And actually, most of the audience is actually in 4.2. There are actually a few, a few people that are already in 4.3.
Okay.
SP1. And do you know when 4.3 SP2 is out? Is it out, or is it coming out in
Yep.
November?
End of year.
Okay.
So I'd expect December at this point.
Okay. So just let's get moving.
Okay. All right. So we talked about the what it is. It's Bobj in the cloud for you, right? What it includes then and why it's nice for you. Number one, it's a single cloud option with subscription pricing for you. So it simplifies a lot of that maintenance pain, gets your contracts all clarified into a single subscription based. It includes the licenses. It includes then, as we talked about, also infrastructure and operations, as Bruno and I mentioned. And then there are also additional offerings that come with it in terms of implementation, moving to 4.3, onboarding, customer enhancements, things like that that you would want to do. And that could be either with us or with, Wiiisdom, our esteemed PCE prime partner here for the tool. A lot of different ways for you to interact with that. Some key things here is that this has been built by the people who build and maintain business objects. So that means that it is built totally on a 100% best practices reference architecture from us. So, gone would be the days of you having to wonder about, do I need to fire up more servers for, the Webby processing server, those kinds of questions go away because we're handling that for you. And with our own kind of experience on what to do, what works best. And so in that sense, it's also built with our own upcoming roadmap modifications in service packs or versions. So it's future proof from how we've set it up for you and how it can continue to go forward. And then, it's engineered to be maximum uptime for you, as many of you kind of do on your own right now. and really, it's a great way for us to continue to provide the capabilities of the Business Objects platform for you, but under our direction. Support starts to be easier as well. How many of you have dealt with support where they're trying to get into your system to see, is there one weird configuration change that you made that nobody else has made that we haven't seen, which is why you're having that problem? That all goes away, right? Because everyone looks and feels the same from the reference architecture piece up. And then in terms of, the ability for us to provide the level of solution that everyone needs right now, this is really the snapshot of what the offerings are today. I left this slide in because one important thing to note is that as of 2028, right, so the end of 2027, we're actually going to be moving away from selling business objects as an on-premise solution. But that doesn't mean business objects is dead. So don't take that from FUD from competitors. It simply means that the left side of my slide here moves to the right, so that in 2028 we end up having two analytics platforms, BobJ served up in PCE or Analytics Cloud. And so that's key. That's in our statement of direction. So that is publicly available for the last I think 7 months now, Bruno.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
And so that's very important, Patrick. So basically that means that, BobJ will continue on PC or on the cloud, and that will remain to be supported by SAP.
Correct.
Okay. I appreciate that clarification.
Yeah, that's huge, and that's key for those who aren't SAP centric. You should know, for those who are SAP centric, you already will know that, we're trying to become more and more of a cloud company. We just see it as a better way to manage our offerings for you, the customer, and provide more bang for the buck. It's ways for us to get innovation out there for you, so that with that one yearly upgrade, for instance, you get, you don't have to wait and screw around with waiting for when the best time is for you to upgrade to the next service pack or the next version, that kind of a thing. And so as we do that, though, this, if anything, to me is a key recognition that, hey, you know what? BobJ, from a functionality standpoint, still is not fully and outright replaced by SAC. And there are still a lot of you customers out there who see the need for the BobJ tooling. And so as we move to be the cloud company, we still want to retain those capabilities for you. So, for those of you who've been worried through the last couple of years with our kind of seeming market focus on SEC, know that really that was a cloud focus, and that BobJ is still a part of that thought process as well.
And also, Patrick, we have a question from Hital asking, so upgrade from 4.1 to 4.2 will also be handled by SAP. So I think it's pretty important to clarify which version customers need to be on to be able to be supported by PCE.
Right. So BobJ PCE, and I think, again, I don't know why they mishmashed this up, because that should be right up front. It's a 4.3 Service Pack 1 managed environment. So that is the current version of PCE. So if anyone moved to it now before December, that's the version you would be starting with, is 4.3 Service Pack 1. So if you're moving to PCE, you do need to manage an upgrade from your current 4.x environment to 4.3. And that's why partners like Bruno are around to help with that very thing, right?
Yeah, we've actually helped over the years. I think we've been in business for 14 years. We've done thousands of migrations. So it's something that we're very familiar with. And also, I think another important point for customers that are going to PCE is what happens if they're on Windows, Patrick?
So PCE is also based, in terms of best practices from what our product team likes, it's going to be a Linux environment. So we need to transfer you to the Linux environment as well, which is okay, really, because there's not a whole lot of loss there. The only interesting thing for that is that Crystal 2020 will cease to be available on Windows. Well, no, I'm sorry. It will only be available on Windows servers. It'll cease to be available on Linux in about a year and a half. So we're already looking at in plans of standing up a Windows server for just the Crystal piece of this as part of PCE.
And that makes a lot of sense, because there are so many customers, in particular in the US, that are that have leveraged Crystal over
Absolutely.
for all these years, and they don't want to see all these reports go away because, like, for their webbies, their universes, they spend so much money on these environments, and it works. So
it does.
yeah,
There's some that don't even realize they're using Crystal sometimes.
yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah.
And
So that and I will say that does scare some people, the Linux aspect of it, but really, that is really where from the beginning the Parisians who developed business objects, that's kind of what that was always their sweet spot, and they feel it gives the best performance, the best uptime, all of those capabilities. And so don't be freaked out by that, because that's again why we have partners like Bruno and folks who can help you navigate to that. And we really have not seen, there's no loss of capability.
Patrick, I think some of the worries from from the audience in general on that is over the years you can, I would say, over 80%, if not more, of the customers or the install base, I think, has been traditionally on Windows.
Absolutely.
And if you're on Linux, basically the support, or if you got some bugs or whatever, it's SAP has not been over time as reactive, of course, because there's a much larger install base on Windows.
Right.
That's one of the concern.
And that's another good point that as I broached with support, right? Those days would be gone now, right? If we had to kind of focus more on advancing things because 80% of the customer base was on Windows servers, well, we won't anymore, because 100% of the customer base would be on Linux, right? So it allows the developers to get back to their sweet spot in terms of what they're developing. Any bugs, they can find that quickly and deal with it. So it is a bit of a change. But then again, too, you, the customer, you're not going to be needing to deal with that change as much, because you're not going to be managing those Linux servers. We are.
And just before we move on, just one last question from Hital.
Sure.
Difference between, so a lot of people are asking, what's the difference between SAP PCE and SAC, so SAP Analytics Cloud. So a lot of people are, a little confused of what these two solutions are.
Okay. All right. So SAP Analytics Cloud is from a corporate standpoint, it's our direction for innovations in analytics going forward. It's a purpose-built for the cloud, from the cloud up, offering that combines the best of BI, like Bob J side, plus planning. So for the non-financial people like me, let you do what if, and predictive as well. So we try to bring AI and machine learning into a single user experience. Now, the beauty there is we also have a variety of links back to the business objects platform. So SAC can continue to use universes, for example, or even Webby documents as data sources. So if you are not starting from scratch, if you're starting from the position of most of you where you have business objects, it's a way for you to extend business objects with more modern visuals, a more modern singular user experience, and a way to tie in innovations like predictive and other things that we may find are innovative for us. For the SAP-centric customer, Analytics Cloud will become the way that we do operational reporting in all of our applications. And so that's a clue that it is here to stay. And, so we can certainly, if anyone has questions on SAC, Bruno and I could certainly follow up with you on more of an intro as to what that is and why it's a little bit different. But, the key thing here, I think, for you is if you want to stay business objects, you can. If you want to go into a hybrid mode where you combine the best of Bob J with the best of these new innovations, you've got that capability with PCE as well. And if you wanted to go straight to SAC, we've got that option for you too.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on, Patrick.
Sure. Okay, some other key things here for the PCE from a characteristic standpoint. As I mentioned before, it is a two-tier landscape, right? Two-tier landscape, excuse me. So you've got production, you've got dev QA. It's full use of the Business Objects Enterprise Edition licenses. That gets lost again in the wash sometimes. It is Bob J as it is today. It's simply served up from our data centers versus yours. Available alongside other PCE landscapes. So this goes back to the SAP-centric crowd. a lot of our on-premise offerings are being moved into these private cloud editions for the reasons that we kind of talked about with business objects. And so if you are in kind of an SAP centric world, then this can be available alongside any other PCE landscapes that you have. Lifecycle management, that's all on us, right? So the release, upgrades, support packs, that's all on us now. You can influence that upgrade time slot though too, right? So it's not, hey, every year at December 1st, you'll get the upgrade. You as customers can help influence when you want to see those upgrades happen. And then we've also got separate pricing for other configurations and user trainings and other options that we didn't include in the base.
So that's really important, actually, what you say, because a concern from the install base has been, well, okay, SAP is going to manage the our BobJ and all the upgrades, but one question I've heard very consistently has been, well, how about if they do an upgrade when it's the busiest time of the year or the busiest time of the quarter? So that's always that's the $1 million
Absolutely.
question. Definitely, you don't want that. So
right. And of course, that's how some people fall behind too, right? Because they push it off because they need to, but then they never quite get to, hey, let's get to 4.3. So this is kind of the best of both worlds, right? We can shield you from doing it during that high time of the year, but we still force you to do it at some point so that you don't end up 5 releases behind.
Thanks, Patrick.
Sure. All right, so from a benefit standpoint, right? I mean, BobJ has been cloud ready for, 7 or 8 years now, right? So, and it does then become it's really the only multi-cloud enterprise platform for you that's in the market today. We already talked about how it's a user-based subscription model, but the user counts then are then delivered with t-shirt sizing, and we'll talk about that. It really correlates to how many users you have, what your usage might be, which we've got some cloud advisors to help you figure that out as you're going through the process. We talked about how it helps you extend to other SAP PCE solutions. It is a dedicated system landscape on the cloud infrastructure for you. So what does that end up in the end, right? It starts to lower your TCO and gives you faster time to value and faster time to innovation, I think is the key thing there. And here we get to our hyperscalers, right? So Amazon, of course, Azure, and Google Cloud Platform as well. Those are the 3 key that we're using right now. If there are other desires, let Bruno or let me know, and we can see what kind of groundswell of a desire for that we could see. But the top 3 are the ones that we use right now.
And traditionally that covers most of the markets.
Right, exactly.
There are a few exceptions, but that definitely covers most of the market. Yeah.
Yep. So here we get to the configurations, right? And so again, we get to, it's really user count and t-shirt sizes, and those go from small to XL. And Bruno, who knows me, is not a demure man. I'm kind of offended that there's no double XL in there, but what can I do? So it comes down to the small is 1 to 500 users. The mediums are 501 to 1,000 users. Large goes up to 3,000. And then XL is anything above 3,000. And you can see how kind of the baseline server configurations change in those different sizings.
And Patrick, so overall today, you've got multiple scenarios. You got multiple deployments that are still on core, that are core based, and then a lot of deployments that are named and concurrent based.
Right.
So you guys convert these licenses? How does that work?
So we still do it as named or concurrent, and those licenses then become subscriptions for you, in addition then to the t-shirt size of deployment. And how we count those, there's a slide on that where we talk about basically it's 3 times the concurrent user count becomes, there's a great example for it later, so I'll hold on that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Included components, once again, to put a hammer on the nail. It's everything that's in BobJ today is available for you. Now, the key being everything available today, right? 4.3, and as of the end of last year, Explorer was end of life. as was the former Excelsius dashboard design. So those are not included, right? And also, just because it's PCE doesn't mean we've changed other things. So Lumira Designer is still there now, but as most of you know, at the end of 2024, that goes into end of support cycles, and that continues even though it's in PCE today.
Okay.
All right. But it's everything else in the platform. It's just, again, we've just shifted it to a managed infrastructure. So it's still, especially for the end users, it's still the same old BobJ, just served up a different way.
And tell me in 4.3, so customers will need to be going to UNX. Is this correct?
At the end of Service Pack 1.
Okay, so at the end of SP1 4.3,
Right.
customers will need to move to.
And that's a great point too, Bruno. So don't be afraid of going to 4.3 with the universe aspect. You can still have UNVs when you are going with. Actually, I'm wrong. I think it's not the Service Pack 1. I believe it's at the end of Service Pack 2.
Yeah, I think it was a little later, but overall, anyway, just right now.
So you have time. You have time, but as Bruno and I have probably been yelling at you in the wind for years, it's it's a great time to think about moving to the UNX off of the UNV. There are
So
a lot
guys, on the in the comment box, I'd be curious to know who's on UNV, who's on UNX, and also if you've got some crystal reports that are remaining, I'm also interested to hear that, and as well if you've got some if you're on Windows or Linux. So yeah, the debate of converting to UNX has been going on for years, and people have been pushing it forever. And right now, guys, that's the end of the road. And it's always a matter, okay, or should I do it before the migration, or should I do it after? So that's always the $1 million question. And there are a lot of, there are a lot of
schools of thought on which.
Yes, different schools of thoughts. And I personally would say is I think you're better off to do it to do the cleanup before you migrate. This way you've cleaned everything up. It's all nice and clean, and you start with a good base.
I agree.
Or if you start to, it's like if you move to a new house, overall, you don't want to do the cleanup and throw all the junk or give away all the junk that you have. You want to do that before you move. So it's, I would say it's pretty much the same thing. So,
and that's always kind of a best practice that we've advertised, right? It's anything from if you're moving from say 4.2 to 4.3 or 4.1 to 4.2, or back in the old days 3 to 4. That's a great time for you to look at the environment as a whole. Are there a bunch of superfluous Webby documents or crystal reports that no one's using? Are there those kinds of things that we can clean out the repository with? So if you're doing that, why not take that opportunity to look and see if if we switch to UNX, what are some additional cleanings we can do that way too?
And it's not necessarily so simple. And that's why, a lot of people get actually our solutions is, when it comes to repoint, it can be actually pretty complex. And a lot of customers are leveraging 360 to do that.
Absolutely.
To do that work. So, feel free to contact us if you've got some interest there, and we'll be more than happy to help you. In the answers I see, so please just continue the feed, but I see a lot of people are on UNV. Some people are in UNX, and I see actually Sally, she's got both. So
nice.
Well, it's I guess she's in the process of going to UNX, or I hope. So if not, good luck.
Actually, Bruno, I'd be intrigued to know too, for the Crystal users, who's using Crystal Enterprise versus more of the Crystal 4 XXXX year.
Oh, well, let's see. So please feedback to Patrick on that. I'm actually quite interested to hear your answers on that. So please let us know which Crystal version you're using. So
I suspect most people are still using Crystal for the year, but
I see Suba answered. He's got UNV and UNX, and then he's got Crystal reports as well.
Okay.
So anybody else, just please, put in the feed, and then we'll address it. Let's move on in the meantime.
Yep. Absolutely. So this is the example that I was starting to talk about, right, where we get into determining your configuration. So let's look at the example. Let's say you have 50 concurrent sessions and 100 users. So to do your t-shirt sizing, you would take those 50 and multiply them by 3 to get 150 users. And then you have your 100 named users. And that 250 is what we would use as your t-shirt size for the configuration. So fairly straightforward there.
Okay, so you're using a factor of 3.
A factor of 3, correct.
Okay, and how about, so if you've got like a core licenses, is this, you've got like a conversion, or, so I'm assuming you've got like a rule to convert the cores to the name user licenses as well.
For CPUs? Yep.
Yes,
And that actually, that varies to some extent. We do have some rules of thumb, but we have found that, if customers have used auditing in the past, or if there are 360 customers, Wiiisdom customers, who can use those tools to figure out what your actual concurrent usership is, that's usually the better route to go. But we do have some rules of thumb if need be as well.
Yeah, and we've seen that multiple times, so that's always a question. And to be frank, one thing that's been interesting is when we do assessments with customers, we typically find out that about 30% of the licenses are not used. Right. So when you do that move to PCE, it's actually a good time also to talk with your SAP rep to say, okay, here are my licenses. What can you do? Exactly. And also, I know there's some ways that you can convert some of these unused licenses to SAC. So I know there are some programs behind.
And we're going to talk about that, as a matter of fact. So
that's quite good.
All right. So that's kind of how you figure out the t-shirt sizing. And then we also do have, some who are already freaking out about only having 2 tiers. We do have non-productive tiers that you can add on as well. So, since we do come with the production and dev Q&A, but maybe, we have some government customers, for instance, who like to have, 4 versions of dev at different stages of testing. And so you can choose to add on non-productive tiers as well. So fear not those who want more.
Okay, because that was traditionally, okay, I've got prod and then 2 sub-environments. So overall, right. There's not really an issue with that. So we've seen customers perhaps with 20 sub-environments.
Right. And by the way, sometimes this brings up the question too of what about disaster recovery? So that's another option for you as well. It doesn't necessarily come with disaster recovery, but there are ways for you to option purchase some additional disaster recovery.
And I've seen actually that you have, like, for example, site A, site B. So where site B can, take over site A.
Yep, you can do that too. Yep.
And in addition, actually, we've seen a lot of customers that have transitioned, that have moved actually to PC, where they use these 2 site approaches, and also they use 360 plus for its incremental capability, so that they can roll back actually down to the object, because these are VMs and they reproduce the exact same copy. And if there's something corrupted, it's always an issue to roll back. So, yep.
Absolutely. So again, fear not those who need more tiers. In terms of network performance, right, we have our own best practices that we recommend in terms of it's really essentially the recommendations that we have for BobJ 4.3 if you're doing it yourself. It's just that we then start to include some of the things from a WAN and a LAN standpoint that will keep it upright. And we also then try to rely on best practices from the hyperscaler that we are deploying on as well. So we do everything we can to make sure that between the BobJ stack and how we manage it and the hyperscaler that it's sitting on, that we give the best performance and responses.
Now, this is really an important point, because one of the number 1 complaint of customers in general going to the cloud, in fact, it's not, PC or so, in general going to the cloud, is actually performances.
Yep. So one of the first questions we always get, do you have performance benchmarks? And we really don't, but I think, this shows that we are paying attention to it.
Yeah. And, in terms of performances also, it's a matter of architecture. So where's your data? It's, there are all these factors that you need to take in consideration to ensure that, you maximize the performances. It always comes down to that.
Absolutely. Okay. So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And cloud migrations are always IT migrations. So these are not business migrations. So
Right.
that's why you always end up hearing a business saying, hey, things were actually faster before. And so it's something that's very important, because if things are in fact slower, it's going to be very difficult for you to justify, the move.
Right.
And also with 360, we help you understand where the bottlenecks are, compare the performances before and after. This way, actually, there are no arguments on that, but performances are absolutely critical.
Absolutely.
And business users, they will see that. I guarantee you. So.
Yep. Well, as you all know, right? They're the first to complain about anything that happens with the tool. In terms of scope, I think this is important to bring up too. So if you look at on-premise, right, you've got everything from technical infrastructure up through management services, the management of the application itself, and then advisory and implementation. If you deployed business objects in the cloud on your own with a partner in an infrastructure as a service kind of a mode, they would handle the first two and then get into you would be working on the application management and the advisory side. PCE bumps that up so that you're only having to deal with part of the application management. Now, what do I mean by that? And that's something Bruno and I were talking about yesterday. We handle, again, server configurations, the number of servers, the number of CPUs allotted to different things. But you are still managing the CMC like you've done before for your current deployment today, right? So you manage users, you do all of that kind of grunt work, but it's really more grunt within the application versus the plumbing, if that makes sense. So I'm hoping that this kind of lays that out a little bit more and makes you realize, hey, you're not totally giving control over to SAP. You are still free to run with the things that you need to run with from a management console perspective. Any thoughts on that, Bruno?
Yes, that was very important to clarify. So overall, yes, you're still going to handle the security,
Right.
Handling your universes, making sure that there are no regressions after, there's an upgrade. All the things that you're doing today that will remain. It's just, again, you're not going to worry anymore about the upgrade itself. And of course, the hardware. That's always very painful, and that can be extremely long for deployments in general. So
right.
Yeah, I appreciate that clarification.
Yeah. And also that's good news for you, right? Because it lets your BobJ experts focus on the really important things, universe development, the kinds of things Bruno just mentioned, versus having to worry about, what our servers are aging, let's deal with that, all those other kinds of things, right? It lets your FTEs focus on the important stuff.
Yep.
In terms of services, what is or is not included then too, right? So what's included is, again, a deployment of 4.3 Service Pack 1 on the hyperscaler of your choice. You get one major upgrade per year to the latest PCE that is certified and supported from a Service Pack standpoint. You also get regular system backups and monitoring, and then any other standard operations services. What is not included is migration and advisory services to move your existing content into PCE. And again, some of you might be savvy to do that yourself. I would say that's where partners like Bruno step in to really use their breadth and depth of experience to help with that migration and advisoring on that. And then we also have some other cloud application service packages which are available, and those are laid out here. So in the gold box, we have what's included from a standard perspective, right? So it's things we just talked about, including scanning and repairing of your repository, running the diagnostic tools for the repository, cache file and cleanup on things like your Tomcat, your Webby, your log files, reverse proxy settings, all that good stuff. But then we have additional services to do things like auditing, right? So auditing is something you can certainly run from CMC, et cetera. But if you want to turn it on, because we know so many of you, we love you, but you haven't turned it on, right? There are optional services that let us do that, so it gets turned on, and then you can access the audit dashboard from within CMC. You're good to go. And then you can see, I'm not going to read them all, but you can see all the different other configurations that we have available as optional cloud application services that we can do for you.
And, you know, talking about the auditor, frankly speaking, 90% plus of our install base is like we've got 500 to 600 active deployments today. Over 90%, if not over even, I'm sure more than 95%.
I was going to say you're being generous. I'd go more to like 95 to
It's
99.
very rare, actually, that customers
Exactly.
don't turn on their auditor, and probably it's because in some days there were issues with the auditor, and actually things got a lot better now with 4.2.
Absolutely.
So that really has been an issue. So again, if you want to go on PCE in terms of prereqs, is you need to be in 4.3. And you need to be on Linux in order to go to 4.3, in order to go to PC. Once you are on Linux and in 4.3, basically, then you move that deployment to PCE. So the customer is responsible of doing that. And then after that, SAP takes it from there. Is that correct, Patrick?
I think that's a nice summary of it. Yes, Bruno. Yep.
Thank you.
And then this, again, you know, we can send you the slides after. This is kind of the commercial terms, right? So it covers the system landscape, it covers different service level agreements, and then their contractual terms to deal with there. And so here, I'm sorry, go ahead, Bruno.
No, go ahead. I was going to bring this up, so that's
okay, excellent. Great. And so here's where, you know, the scenario Bruno spoke of earlier, where, you know, we do some auditing, we find that, you know what, I'm not really using all of the licenses that I have. And another key thing, right, when I mentioned earlier how Explorer is now end of life and Excelsius Dashboard Design is end of life, right? So when we did that, if you were to switch your license, your on-prem license from however you bought it yesterday to today, there's actually a 20% savings in cost because there are tools we simply don't have anymore, right? Along the lines of Explorer and Excelsius. And so what we have a program to do is to allow you to retire that maintenance in terms of the tools you aren't using, and then perhaps, as Bruno mentioned, you know, users you aren't using either. And we can retire that maintenance, and it becomes a pot of money that you can then extend into the cloud. And so that's actually a nice way to bring us all the way back to the front, where we were looking at the different types of analytics capabilities that we have. If you wanted to start to add on SAC to get to some of that predictive capability, that what if capability, that planning capability as an extension of your existing business objects, universes, and documents, this is a great way for you to take your existing maintenance and turn it into a right-sized pricing that you've used then for PCE, and the additional maintenance that you can push into the cloud for an SAC perspective.
And talking about right sizing, it's very critical before actually you go to PC to clean up as much as you can.
Absolutely.
And they're basically going to help you reduce your costs afterwards of PC, because you're going to have a smaller t-shirt. And traditionally we see a good 60% of the content has never been used in the past 13 months. So this is just easy money saving, just doing all that cleanup. So
exactly. Because, you know, we all know, you know, the user who loves to filter things. So they take Bruno's great Webby document and they create 15 copies of it, which are simply just 15 filtered versions of the same thing, right?
Yeah. That's very, very common. So
yeah,
I'm not sure I'm not popular, but yeah.
Well, what's the most you've seen, Bruno, in terms of reports?
We've seen some reports that were duplicated over 100 times.
Yeah, we found, we were looking at the Air Force one time, and we found like over 4,000 documents that were just, you know, that were one-offs that had been kind of done in that way. So
yeah, and in fact, in 360i's, our BI on BI solution, we're able to analyze all the content not used and also to find all the duplicates. So that's always a good source of things. It's very easy. And again, the more you reduce all these duplicates, all the objects you're never using, you know, the more you'll save, and also the easier, or the easiest and the quickest your migration will become. So that's That's very, very important.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge thing, right? So one of the advantages of moving to PCE is that lower TCO. And so by, using this as well as a way to lower additional costs in terms of your usership and tools you aren't using anymore, in addition to lowering that t-shirt size, it's all, plus plus for you, the customer, in terms of your total cost.
And tell me about SAC. So
Right.
is it easier now to use SAC in 4.3? Has there been any improvements in terms of universe connectivity?
Yes. So great points, right? So for those of you who've looked at SAC before, you might be aware in your 4.2 environments that we have a universe connection, a live universe connection capability, which actually I think we talked about here. Yeah. So this is a good cloud, good one for that. And so we've been able to use the universe as a baseline for SAC for a year or more, but we are now on version 3 of that connector. So yes, we've certainly gotten better. And that includes with 4.3, the ability to turn a Webby document into a data source for SAC. So now it doesn't have to be just, I have Webby document A that was built on universe B. I want to use some SAC stories on that same universe. I could actually use Webby document A as my data source. So anything custom I did in the document itself, custom measures, other custom groups and things like that, that could all be used as a baseline for my SAC story as well. So with 4.3, we've improved that greatly. Another big thing with 4.3 is that we modernized the look and feel of the user experience for Webby. And for those who do start to see Analytics Cloud, you'll note that the user experience between the two now looks and feels very much the same. So if you're worried about user change management in terms of getting to a new analytics tool, you'll have to go through it anyway from a 4.2 to 4.3 perspective. But once you've done that, SAC is going to be, easy as pie for them to pick up because it's essentially the same look and feel, same font, same kind of modern cloud look that we have for the tool.
Okay.
And also then on the SAC subject, right, there's some key things that we would want to do if you want to have a hybrid environment where you're using your BobJ along with your SAC. And so we have options available to you when you stand up PCE to install and configure these 3 components, which we need if you want to marry up SAC and BobJ. So again, that's actually been popular. There are people who have been intrigued by the hybrid stance for at least a year or so, but they didn't necessarily want to handle it themselves. So now a move to PCE lets them focus on the BobJ side, lets us handle the kind of underpinnings of how to connect to SAC, and then lets the customer focus on more the business user end perspective of SAC instead of having to worry about even configuring these 3 pieces. So I think that's another advantage to move to PCE for some.
Awesome.
All right. And with that, we've come to the end. So this is kind of the summary slide, right? I think we've pretty much covered it all, as we know, right? It's BobJ 4.3 on the hyperscaler of your choice, on Linux, repository in ASE, gives you lower time to, lower TCO, faster time for value and innovation, predefined landscapes. It's one contract for you with a variety of things included. And then we have a variety of options that we discussed that you can add on to the environment as well. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and say thank you. And thanks to Wiiisdom. Thanks to all of you for joining us today. And I'm going to close out the slides and move back to Q&A.
So actually, before we go through the Q&A, the first thing is, Wiiisdom 360 Suite. So overall, we've put together a methodology that we've used on over 1,000 migrations. And so this methodology has been adapted for PCE. So understanding that you need to move from Windows to Linux, move to 4.3, and then from 4.3, go to PCE. So we've actually put together a 3-step methodology where the first step is, as Patrick said, PCE is actually t-shirt size based. So it's very important there that you do some cleanup. It's a good practice. And here it's a good practice that pays. Meaning if you're able to reduce your deployment size, you're actually going to, have a smaller bill from SAP, which is, it's a win for the customer, and overall it's a win even for SAP there, because everybody's happy. And
We do
it's
like happy.
yes. And the good thing here is it's very easy to do with 360, because we're able to extract all the metadata, understand what's the usage, but most importantly, the non-usage. So typically we go in, we look at, hey, what hasn't been used in the past 13 months? That's typically the golden rule. What are the documents that have been duplicated? And we can do a lot of cleanup. And typically, as I was saying earlier, there's a good 60% or more of content that has never been used. And so here, if you remove that content, you're going to do a faster migration, is going to be cheaper, you're going to do less testing. So there is a correlation between the amount of content that you can clean up, the cost of migration, the cost of testing, and then the cost of ownership. It's very, very clear on that. So that's the first step. The second step is, okay, we'll help you to move the content, to do the promotion. And here, what's very important, as what we addressed earlier, are the performances. It's the testing. It's all a matter of testing. So you need to ensure that you don't have any regression. So, hey, is my Webby giving the same numbers than before? That's always a good thing. You want to make sure of. And it's like always when you do that type of work, it's like a box of chocolate. It always looks good, but there's always something that doesn't taste that good. And it's never a good thing just to find out when you tasted it, especially if it's for one of your execs. So here you need to make sure that you test, overall your documents. Also that you compare that all the metadata that was moved from on-prem to the cloud is there. So you've got the same amount of objects as well. Additionally, you need to ensure that the performances are the same. So there are different approaches here. So we're able to check, hey, you run the Webby on-prem, on the cloud, or on PCE, and you're able to do a side-by-side comparison and see, okay, now it used to take, let's say, 2 seconds. Now it takes 1.5 seconds or 3 seconds, whatever it is, but you're able actually to get this information, because you will have discussions with your business users that the performances are not as good as what they were before. So here it's the only way to know what the truth is. Then additionally, there are also some other issues around performances that we can address with 360 within the PC offering that we have. Is we're also able to monitor all the scheduling. So to understand, has there been an evolution? Is it faster, slower than what was before? So there, we're able to extract all the metadata, compare it. And then the third step here is, once you are actually on PC, the whole thing there is, it's a matter of cost. So we're able to help you reduce your operational cost by up to 80%, because we can automate all your daily tasks, like all the things that you're doing individually, we can actually do in bulk. We can add automation. We can add testing. We do also backups, and you're able to do incremental backups. So that's very, very nice. So overall, that's at a high level, that's how 360 Suite can help you. In terms of 360 Suite, we've got 2 packages today. We've got the 360 Suite PCE edition, okay, where this is basically, it's all the solutions from 360 Suite that will help you assess, migrate, test, and reduce your cost of ownership. So that's what's inside. And then you've got the managed edition service, where it's the same thing in the first package, but overall, we will do basically like SAP all your updates, and we'll provide you some training. So that is included. If you have some questions around, 360 Suite and PCE, how it's going to help us, please go on Wiiisdom.com. So again, Wiiisdom with 3 I's, and you can actually go in, put a question in the chat box that you see here on the bottom right, and then we'll get back to you. By the way, if you guys want to get the presentation as well of today, please put in a comment in the Wiiisdom.com. So Wiiisdom with 3 I's. In the Wiiisdom.com website, put a comment in the chat box saying, hey, I want to get the presentation of today. And we've got a team. We've got Zach, we've got Midi, we've got Fahad, we've got a lot of people behind that will be more than happy to share with you guys that presentation. And one thing that's also very important is, 360 or Wiiisdom 360 Suite is the official partner of SAP for PCE migration. So
Absolutely.
And in November, we're going to have a digital summit where we're actually going to show how to do migration. So that's one part. We're going to talk around testing, around data services, because we actually 360 now supports data services for the metadata part. And there are going to be a lot of exciting topics. And also we're going to talk about 4.3 SP2. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So Patrick, let's take a couple questions. We got some time left, if that's okay for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Patrick, let's say, okay, so there's a question from Eamon. So general, how the add-ons are handled on PCE BOE. So how are add-ons handled on BusinessObjects PCE?
So really, for the most part, that's handled by you, the customer, or in concert with a partner. So it's really up to you what kind of add-ons you want to put on. So that's kind of it's nice. You can still function as you do today in that regard.
And are there any issues with data services in 4.3?
Nope. In fact, I saw that question. I'm involved right now with, we're moving Breakthrough Beverage, a large, huge multiple BO environment, to PCE right now. And they're using data services to do a lot of that movement. And they're even moving it to HANA Cloud with the data services piece.
And if I recall, data services 4.3 is going to be supported, I think, in January or so.
I believe that's correct.
Unfortunately, not supported before, but I think that is happening. I think early Q1.
That's Q1 is what I've seen. Yeah.
So I see another question. Let me read it through. So Hetal has got some analysts for Office. So he's saying it's not supported. This is a current functionality in use. Any replacement, or we lose it.
No, analysis for Office is still included in there as well. And analysis for OLAP too, which some people question because it's not on the slide. But analysis for Office is on the slide and it is included. Yes.
There is another question I see going through. Can the customer test the annual upgrade SP before going into production?
I think we're still determining what the process would be for that. But yes, I would imagine that we will let you do that.
Yeah, actually, I don't see why that would be an issue because overall, the customer controls when he's going to do the upgrade.
Correct.
So it shouldn't be really an issue.
Yeah, I don't think it will be.
I have another question as well. Okay, how are extensions like custom task extensions, customizations, font images, etc. handled?
So again, pretty much through the customer and the partner combination yourselves, because those are other kinds of things that you can add. You can add your own templates, things like that, right? So all of that is still capability you don't lose with BusinessObjects that you still get to control. That's the non-plumbing part that you still get to control.
There's another question. How does this model handle secure connections to our on-prem database? What user authentication methods are used?
So again, it's whatever's available in BusinessObjects today are options for you. So SAML's there, right? All the different SSOs that you might use. And then if you become a PCE customer, you will have a cloud advisor who will work with you and your partner on how to stand up what your security scheme is to mimic what you have today in your on-prem environment, in the PCE environment.
Okay. Interesting question around licensing, or it's related. So by default, Mac sessions A named user can consume R10, and there will be no concurrent users in PCE. Obviously not. How will these session limits be addressed in PCE?
Actually, no, concurrent sessions do still exist in PCE. We simply, we change them to a named user count for the t-shirt sizing. But, so in that example we used before where there were 50 concurrent users, those 50 remain 50 concurrents in PCE. We just count them as 150 possible users for the t-shirt sizing. So you do still have the concept of concurrent or named in PCE.
Okay, that was not clear to me. That's actually quite interesting. Okay, I got it. Let's take another question or two before we go. Okay, we got a question from Dario here. Okay, can we access to server in PCE, for example, to configure Apache Tomcat SSL, or for example, configure images in images folder at a server level?
So you can't access the server yourself, but in some conjunction with SAP or with SAP and your partner, perhaps, you will be able to get to those, yes. So we don't give you that access out of the box unto yourself, but you can work with your cloud advisor to get that access or to get those things added, yes.
Awesome. Let's take one last question from John. Hey, John. So does it make sense for all reporting data to be in the cloud as well?
I don't think so. I don't think we would ever state that, because even with our analytics cloud move, one of the things that we are hoisting as kind of our big advantage is our ability to live connect to your data on premise wherever it is. So I'd say an advantage here is you get the best of cloud from a end user dealing standpoint and a monetary standpoint. But for those of you who don't want to let the data out of your own hands, keep it behind your firewall, in your control, we can still do that. And I think that's probably the way most people want to do it. And we're perfectly able to help you do that.
Okay. Thank you very much, Patrick. And again, about 360. So it's, Wiiisdom is actually all a matter of, doing trusted decision, wise decisions. And we've got an entire suite for BobJ where we can do testing, bursting, BI on BI, backup, monitoring. Pretty much anything you want, we'll probably do. And we're now available also on Tableau, and we're also going to be available on other solutions. So, but you can see our focus has been, on BobJ. So don't worry about that, Patrick. And
I know.
I'm a BobJ fan, so
I know.
That's pretty much it.
I'm just kidding.
But
thank you for your support through the years, Bruno. Thank you for all that you're doing with the PCE. I think it's a great move for SAP. I think it's a great move for the customers. I really like that, BobJ lives, and it lives in this PCE environment. I think it's going to make it even easier for you, the BobJ loyalists, to continue to advance your use of it.
And frankly speaking, over the years, as we've seen a lot of people saying, hey, I want to get rid of my BobJ, I want to go elsewhere, whatever.
Right.
The reality is people have invested so much money in BobJ. It works. People love universes. They love their webbies. They love the operational reporting. And the reality is, we're still seeing BobJ for a long, long time. Because it just works. And in terms of scheduling, there is, and reporting actually,
right.
Frankly speaking, everything that's out there just doesn't match it. Yes, there are great solutions for data viz like SAC, but in terms of scheduling or reporting, it's, BobJ is still the king. And it's so much used so deeply by organizations that, it's frankly, to all the BobJ users, I would not be concerned.
Yes.
Because trust me, I see a lot of people saying, hey, I want to go away. Well, so what, how you do it? That's $1 million question. And there are a lot of plans, but in reality, it typically doesn't, it doesn't really work. And it's not that simple because there's so many impacts and it just doesn't work. And very often people have got no idea of actually what's being really scheduled and who's getting all these reports and when they do assessments, they find out, well, actually, biology is everywhere. So it's not going to be that simple. So,
Yeah.
So frankly, I would have absolutely no concern. And, that's why we're still there, and we're still supporting so many customers, and we see many good more years to come. So, yeah. And I see John saying, yeah, can you wear a Yankee cap? Let's talk about it. I can probably do it for a short time, but I've got to convert you, John. So, folks, that's all. Thanks a lot for joining. Hope you had a good time today. Be good, stay cool. Remember, visit wiiisdom.com. Wiiisdom, not with one eye, not with two eye, but with three eyes. So wiiisdom.com. And then just contact us if you want to get a trial, you want to get the demo. If you guys want to get the presentation of today, we'll be more than happy to make it available. And it's also going to be available on our YouTube channel, Wiiisdom channel, where you can see the entire recording of today. So thanks a billion, Patrick. And just
thank you, Bruno. Thanks, everybody. And don't forget, Bruno, go Caps.
Bye-bye, guys.